Welcome to the Ray Harryhausen podcast, the show dedicated to the life, career and films of a special effects titan. Join us as we host in-depth discussions about the work, influences and legacies of this uniquely talented filmmaker. Brought to you by the Ray and Diana Harryhausen Foundation, we will be delving into Ray's archive to bring a unique insight into his work, including exclusive audio from the man himself. We will be joined by special guests for retrospectives, exclusive announcements and competitions, so this podcast is a must-listen for all fans of the world of Ray Harryhausen, animation and classic filmmaking. Hello, I'm joined by Marshall Julius. We're going through Ray Harryhausen's top creatures for the 2020 centenary of Ray Harryhausen. And one of our main projects is to rank Ray Harryhausen's creatures, all of his animated creatures and some of his animated humans, for the very first time. So that poll will be going online very shortly and you'll get your chance to vote. And there's going to be a prize for some of you who maybe guessed the top three of that vote when it comes out in June. The 29th of June, when it's Ray's birthday, his centenary birthday. But Marshall Julius is with us, and he's the successful author and writer. Are you both an author and a writer? Can you be both? Because you write for newspapers, author. You're a critic as well.
Yeah, I prefer Word Monkey. I think it has a catch-all kind of feel to it that kind of seems pretty much, that's me. Word Monkey and nerd.
But there's not a Nobel Prize category yet for that, so...
Well, they're going to have to make one quickly and give it to me.
Well, if there's no one left, it'll be between you and me, because we might be the only surviving writers. That's the only chance I think we'll have of winning the Nobel Prize for literature.
That's
not
true.
That our books aren't good.
I enjoy our books. Our books are pretty much the only ones that I read, John. You know, it's like if I can't read something by me, I'll read it by you, and that's where I draw the line, basically.
And is that why your bookshelves have no books on them?
Yeah, they're all toys. Who's got time to read books when there are so many toys to buy? I read a lot of comics. I definitely read more comics than I read books. Is that a shocking thing? Is that a shocking thing to admit? Maybe not anymore.
I never used to read comics that much. I used to get Doctor Who weekly and then Doctor Who monthly. But I mostly used to read books, and Doctor Who was the only sort of comic or magazine I used to pick up regularly. If you were doing an audio book, which celebrity would you want voicing Vintage Geek?
Oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Obviously. Or Clint Eastwood, just because I would want to be there on the recording sessions. I think that he would find it just very tiresome and annoying, and I would like to be able to call the shots. I would enjoy that, but I don't think he would do a good job. But let's say Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think he would do. I think he would make it all so warm and alive. Definitely.
And he's probably available as well now, isn't he?
Everyone is available now. Everyone, we're all at home. Everyone is reachable.
Maybe you should get him a copy of the book. Send him a copy through and see if there's. But there is Terminator questions in here, so maybe he can voice some of that chapter. Your publisher will be thrilled.
I wrote a book about action movies years ago, and I had the opportunity to give Arnold Schwarzenegger a copy of it. It had kind of a snarky review of Last Action Hero in it, so I kind of hoped that he wouldn't look at that, because most of the reviews were incredibly fawning and in love with him. And it was at a press conference for was it the Sixth Day or the thing with Gabriel Byrne as the devil? It was just
End of Days.
Yeah, it was just such a terrible... He made so many terrible films. And everyone, he'd go to a press conference and he would say, "Oh yeah, this is my best film," and he would just lie. He would just lie to our faces.
Stop whining.
So we went. Pardon?
Stop whining.
So, but I went along and I had a copy of my book, and I was determined to give him a copy. And I was at the very back of the room, and it was a very big hotel suite, and they kind of emptied it out, and it was just full of chairs and journalists. And as he was turning to leave, I kind of vaulted over this journalist who was like kneeling down to put his stuff away in his bag, and I just ran and I screamed out, "Mr. Schwarzenegger!" And he turned around. I probably thought it was like assassination attempt or something. But he stopped.
Not another one. Get to the chopper and being assassinated again.
I ran up to him, and I think I honestly I don't remember a single word that I said. I was very, very much enamoured with him at the time, and all I could hear was sort of like the blood rushing through my ears, and I remember shaking his hand, and it was an enormous hand, thinking that he was very charismatic, and I was speaking words. But like now, I had no idea what I was saying, and he nodded, and he took the book. He probably thought that was the only way he was going to get away from me. I think he was very nice. He certainly stopped for like a minute, and we had a chat. I really wish that I could remember what we said. But I was so excited. I was so not in the moment. The whole time in my head, I was jumping up and down saying, "It's Arnold, it's Arnold." And only when he went, I realised I had actually no idea what I'd said or what he said or anything. And, it should have taught me a lesson to be more present in the moment and to not always, kind of comment on what I'm doing at the time. But that's not who I am, so... Like now, I didn't listen to a word I said. I literally didn't. I have no idea what I just said. What are we talking about?
What would be a good idea next time that happens? Because there's lots of journalists in the room. Get one of them to take your picture.
Yes, well, obviously now
I do that
got
frequently.
Yeah, everyone's got their phones on them. I would not have let that pass without getting a picture of him now. But this was like back in the day when, no one did that. This was in the day when you would ask for autographs if you wanted souvenirs.
I used to do it years. You're seeing all the pictures of me and Ray Harryhausen from it's like people used to say to me, "How did you think to bring a camera there?" And who's taking the picture? Because it's always someone else. Because back in the day, you couldn't do selfies.
No.
And I used to go around film school, John Walsh, Secrets Revealed. I'd have different people as my sort of official photographer every term. Somebody else, one of the other students. There was never any younger students because I was always the youngest there. But incoming students, I would kind of convince them to take photographs on a production, do like unit stills. And unit stills would involve quite a lot of pictures of me, proving that I can work in a black shirt or black t-shirt. So I end up having all these stills, which is quite useful. Now, there's a connection, isn't there? There's two connections between Ray Harryhausen and Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I'm putting you, the quiz god, on the hook here to ask you what the two connections are. One's quite tenuous, but one isn't. We could play some Muzak.
Okay, so Arnold Schwarzenegger was originally considered to play Perseus in Clash of the Titans. Is that one of them?
Yes, ba-ding! When I did Marshall's fabulous radio show, Fubar Radio, which is currently online, you can watch, you gave me ba-ding every time I got a correct message.
I like the ba-ding, but I especially like doing the negative buzzer on people, which was apparently very, very loud. And I pressed it much too much, according to my wife. She said
I never heard those during my answers.
No, you just got endless biddings. So, okay, I remember that. So okay, I got the Perseus one right. That's good. I'm quite pleased with that. Was that the tenuous one or the...
No, that's the easy one.
Oh, okay. So, I have no idea about the second one. You have to tell me. You have to give me and tell me what the second one is.
Well, the second one was in the late 1960s. Ray tried to option Conan for himself. So he tried to create a feature film series from the Conan novels. Ah. So, of course, tenuous connection because, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't involved until the 80s with the John Milius film. But it would have been fascinating had Ray Harryhausen created Conan.
Yeah, that would have been amazing. But I absolutely say that is not any kind of connection, John, and you just basically swindled me out of getting 100% right. That's that's outrageous. That is outrageous that you asked me that. That is not an Arnold Schwarzenegger question. I dispute that. Sir.
Press my earpiece and check with the adjudicator. Nope, they say I'm right. So
fine.
We'll have to agree to disagree there. Now,
have to leave it
you're
open
here
to the
now
court of
to talk
public
about-
opinion, yes.
So, Marshall, you're here to talk about your unsung Harryhausen sequences, your top 3. So how are you defining your unsung sequences?
Well, I would say that it's any sequence that isn't the Children's of the Hydra's Teeth sequence or the Medusa sequence. Basically, when you ask anybody what their favourite scene from a Harryhausen film is, I think invariably people's minds go to that, Jason and the Argonauts or Clash of the Titans sequence. So for me, as much as I love both of those sequences, and obviously they're amazing, there's a reason that everybody says those, there are so many other great scenes that I think are worth kind of remembering, that I kind of set myself the task of picking 3 that aren't like sort of immediately obvious. But I think that they're all sung. They're sung by somebody. They're sung by us. They're not completely unsung, is it? How could they be?
Right, well, let's kick off then with number 3. So do you want to tease us into that?
Okay, so my third would be Mighty Joe Young, who I talked about before. I love the sequence in the nightclub, Joe's nightclub debut in the film bearing his name. It always struck me as making much more sense than the way that they unveiled King Kong in the original movie. Obviously, Macho Young made by a lot of the same people as King Kong. And so as we know, in King Kong, when they catch the monkey, they bring him all the way to New York. And it's like, what should we do with him? How can we, properly, cash in on him? Is it, I know, we'll rent a swanky New York theatre. We'll put him up in chains on the stage, and we'll open the curtain. That will be the show.
Can't sit so near the screen. It hurts my eyes.
This is not a moving picture, madam.
What? And Mr. Denham makes those pictures of those darling monkeys and tigers and things.
But this is more in the nature of a personal appearance, madam.
Well, I never thought I was going to see something.
Say, what is it anyhow?
I hear it's a kind of a gorilla.
Gee, ain't we got enough of them in New York?
Stand by, Ann, when I call you. No, it's all right. We've knocked some of the fight out of him since you saw him.
I often think if he hadn't just escaped in the first minute, after about an hour, would you think people would have gotten bored? It'd be like, yeah, I mean, a giant ape is exciting for the first hour, but, what can they talk about after that? It's like, okay, here it is. It's not doing anything. It's just, it's lazy showmanship, John. It's lazy showmanship. And I think that I have this idea that when Ray Harryhausen joined the team for Mighty Joe Young, that he had a conversation with Willis O'Brien and said, you can't just do that. It doesn't make sense. You can't just have an ape standing there and invite the press to take photos of him, and that's your whole show. He has to do something, and that's why I think that in Mighty Joe Young, obviously he's not as big as King Kong, so it's a bit more practical. He can actually do stuff on the stage, and he's got a human friend, so he's sort of like, and he's trained her up and she's trained him up, and they work well together, and so he can do more than Kong was inclined to do. But it made more sense to me. Like if I was going to see a giant ape perform on stage, I would want it to be like the Mighty Joe Young thing, rather than watch him chained on a stage, which is a bit sad, frankly. So the reveal is wonderful when they got the girl Jill, played by Terry Moore. She's playing Beautiful Dreamer, which is like his favourite track, and the piano starts moving around on the stage, and it's all dark, and she's getting raised up, and you're like, what's going on? And the light comes on, and underneath there's Joe, and he's holding the stage, and like everyone's like gasping, and I thought, now that's showbiz. That is proper showmanship. And then they move on to the scene where he's having a tug of war with all these kind of circus strongmen. And I just think that's just the most kind of wonderful, kind of playful sequence, and it makes sense, and it's fun, it's lively, it's got a sense of humour, it's kind of exciting, it's a bit edgy because, you know, he's still a giant ape and he could go mental and kill everyone if he wanted to. So there's that edge to it, and it's just, I always loved that sequence. Plus, you know, when I was young, growing up, watching all these classic Hollywood movies with my mum, you know, there's so many films in the 40s and the 50s that took place in these glamorous nightclubs that just don't exist now. Now nightclubs are all sort of like discos, I imagine. Not that I was ever much of a nightclub sort of person, but I love the idea of you know, the wonderful kind of orchestras and everybody kind of sipping cocktails and all sort of dressed up. There was just a real sort of impossible glamour to it, and the thought of going to one of these clubs and having a giant ape act as well is very, very attractive to me. So that is going to be my first sequence, Joe's nightclub debut in Mighty Joe Young.
Well, let's take a listen to that.
For the love of Mike, what's this supposed to be?
His back's gone nuts.
Give it a chance, fellas, give it a chance. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joseph Young of Africa.
There we go. So Mighty Joe Young there, his nightclub debut. I was thinking while we were listening to that, what would Bernie Delfont, the theatrical impresario, have done with King Kong? And I'll tell you what he would have done. He would have had Kong in the background, you know, in his chains, very nice. And he would have had probably Cliff Richard and the Shadows come out and do a few tracks. He would have had Tommy Trinder or some other kind of comedian of the day come out and do something. Ken Dodd, maybe.
Yeah, and it would have all been ape and banana themed and jungle.
Yeah, so
it would have all had
been
something to do. You're right, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, you know, there's in defence of that. Right now, next number, our penultimate choice, your penultimate choice, number 2.
So number 2 is the crab sequence from Mysterious Island. And I think this is definitely unsung. The crab never gets any love from anybody. Nobody ever lists the crab. And I think it's because it's not very smart. It spends the whole fight with one claw out of action, because it immediately grabs one of the humans. And you're right. I mean, you say that some of Harryhausen's creations weren't just creatures, because there's a little, you know, stop motion animated person thrashing about the whole time. Although they completely forget about him. If you watch him, the whole time the crab is fighting, and he's kicking his arms and legs. He's not kicking his arms. He's kicking his legs, and you see he's alive. But then they keep fighting it, and they manage to overturn the crab, and it's like they just forget about this poor schmuck in the crab. So anyway, the crab grabs this guy, and it's holding him the whole time, and all it's got are really 2 crabs. There's nothing, two claws. That's really all it's got to fight with. And instead of throwing the guy down and then having 2 claws to fight the people with, it just holds this guy the whole time. And so it's down to, like, you know, it's 50% out of action right from the beginning. And I think that it's not maybe Ray's most creative sequence from the beginning, because it is basically just people pushing their spears towards the camera and then shots reverse of the crab sort of standing there. It's not like as integrated, certainly as you know, as many of the other sequences. So why then, if I'm saying that the crab itself is quite a stupid fighter and the sequence itself is not the greatest Ray Harryhausen sequence, am I so fond of it? I hear you ask, or maybe I could just hear you think it's because the way it ends. The way it ends is genius, and it's got my favourite punchline of any kind of Harryhausen scene, because they manage to they turn it on its back, and it's you know, it's wiggling its little crab legs. Then they push it off the cliff into this hot spring, and it falls into this bubbling hot spring, and you hear a kind of squealy sort of. And then the next scene is of all bits of crab strewn over the landscape, and everybody's just sort of picking their teeth and patting their stomachs, and they go, "Oh, that's the best crab I've ever cooked." And I thought, now that is classic. Not only did, you know, the way they killed it is by pushing it into a hot spring, thereby cooking it and having delicious, fresh, giant crab. I think that is just genius.
Well, I particularly like the opening of that, because they think they're standing on a rock, and of course the land moves from under them, and that Bernard Herrmann music that sort of kicks in with clarinets, I think, to start with. Let's have a listen. There you go. That's really evocative. Just hearing it there, it kind of places you right back in that moment. And as you say, the creature's quite instinctive, isn't it? You know, it doesn't have have any motivation beyond being just an instinctive sea creature. Or is it a crustacean? If it's a,
it is a crustacean, and you know, it's just. I think it's a crustacean. It doesn't. It's not particularly aggressive or anything. It doesn't really know what to do. They walk on it, they surprise it, it kind of snaps a bit at them, and then they cook it. I sort of feel sorry for it, but I do like crab. And my one regret is that they don't have like butter or parsley or anything on the island, because it must have been a little bit dry.
French stick, you know.
Yeah.
If we're doing the joint voiceover for Blue Planet when that time arrives and they need a replacement, is this how it's going to be for all the animal creatures?
Well, I say this animal is amazing, but it would go so much better if they had a bit of mint sauce.
A little bit of garlic butter, maybe. A little bit of crusty bread.
Well, I mean, it's because I think most people think of crabs as food, and in the end, it becomes food. I can't think of any other Harryhausen monster that, when it's defeated, is eaten by the humans. Can you? Is there any? I think that's. Certainly not way
only
in the
other
way
way round. There's only creatures that have eaten humans. Yeah, let me.
You've got Cyclops cooking humans or wanting to cook humans. There's lots of that, but actually eating the creature at the end. I mean, you wouldn't want to eat Medusa, would you? I mean, she would be super stringy. And you wouldn't want like a kind of Cerberus steak or and some of them, they're not even kind of flesh, are they? They're like statues, or they're just, you just wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want something that came from hair law, but a lovely bit of crab. I definitely want a giant cooked fresh crab.
Well, we see what we can do for the centenary when it's relaunched and remounted. We'll, if there's, we can go to a crab restaurant. I think we'll have to suffice with that. And now we come to the finale of your unsung Ray Harryhausen sequences and your number one. So do you want to tease this one up first, and we'll play a bit of the clip?
Absolutely. Well, let's just say skeleton. Kill him. So, everybody says the Children of the Hydra's teeth. Obviously, Jason the Argonaut's incredibly iconic, famous sequence with multiple skeletons, lots of soldiers, a lot of action going on. Just absolutely incredible technical achievement. Took Ray months and months. But his first skeleton-human fight in the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad is really wonderful. And I think the equal of the Jason the Argonauts. It doesn't have 7, so it's just the one. But I think that Cohen Matthews as Sinbad, he sells it so well. Didn't Ray Harryhausen talk about how Cohen Matthews was particularly good at that sort of shadow boxing acting required to really sell it? Because he would practice with a stuntman, and the stuntman would stand in for the skeleton, and they would get it down to a point where he knew every single moment, and then the skeleton would step out and Cohen would do the acting, and then Ray would animate it afterwards. Is that correct? Is that sort of the order of things?
Yeah, so Kerwin Matthews was quite an accomplished dancer as well. So I think when you're choreographing moves, to try and remember your moves and where your feet are, it's kind of important if you have that sense of rhythm and repetition as well. Remembering where to be, it's a form of self motion control, isn't it? So I think that's a really good choice. There is another third skeleton sequence that people sometimes forget about, and it's not in Jason and it's not in Seventh Voyage, and I don't mean the ghouls.
You don't mean the
Sinbad.
Golden Voyage? Was that from the Golden Voyage of Sinbad, the ghouls?
No, Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger.
Oh, Sinbad, of course,
Yeah.
yes, of course. Because they look like the skeletons. It's practically the skeletons with a little bit of flesh draped on their bones.
But where else does a human skeleton in animated form appear? In which other Ray Harryhausen film? That's my question to you, Quizmaster.
That's very good.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, sir.
Can you... I have no idea. I don't know.
I could give you the answer, and then you could tell me with some authority.
Yeah, give me the answer, and then I'll tell you. And we can edit in and make me sound smart.
We won't edit it in, but I can tell you the answer. It's during the... You're going to kick yourself. It's during the medical examination on the moon, during First Men in the Moon.
Oh. What, is it actually animated?
Yes. When Carver's... not Carver, who's the other one? The woman who's in the pod, what's her name? The lovely lady that flies up to the moon.
Her, yes.
She's being examined. Her. She's credited as her on the title roller, I'm sure. She has her shoe and she's tapping on the inside of the glass saying, "Let me out of here, let me out." And the Senonites are actually x-raying her. But you can see her skeleton walking through.
Let me out of here. Can you hear me? Let me alone, can't you? Staring at me like an animal in the zoo. You there with my shoe. Give it back to me or I'll let you have the other one. You there with my shoe. Give it back to me or I'll let you have the other one.
Oh, gosh, yes, aren't you clever? Gosh, you got me. Okay, well, I'll concede to that one. That was a better trick question than the bogus Arnold Schwarzenegger one earlier, definitely. I will concede to that.
You can pop that in your next book.
I will. And people will accuse me of asking too difficult questions. Again, but it'd be worth it. It was good.
we have set a question to win your book, and it's the Vintage Geek quiz book, which is really popular, actually. It is probably the most popular quiz book to have. And for people staying at home, and a lot of people have been buying this and having their own quiz nights with their friends and family, down the Zoom and down Hangouts and down Skype and down FaceTime. So it's been very successful. People can have their own quiz nights. And maybe if they contact you, Marshall, you could compare a quiz night to the world.
Absolutely. Well, I've been running quizzes on Twitter every Sunday. I'm going to do... I've done Star Trek and Star Wars, and I'm having a think about what I'm going to be doing moving forwards. Trying to find the right time. I started doing it at 5 p.m. Kind of UK time, but that's not great for America because that's like 9 a.m. and you don't really feel like quizzing at 9 a.m. So I'm kind of switched to 10 p.m. now UK time. So it's like just after lunch in LA, and it's tea time in New York. It seems like a more civilized time for everybody.
Well, you could do two, one for the Europe and UK, and then one for North America. If you're not too busy, you could do two in a day.
I'm definitely not too busy. I thought about doing that, but then I realised that I'm just way too lazy to do that. It's like, and people could cheat. It's like if you watch it and watch the replay if you miss it the first time. That's what I say.
Now, you set a question. If you want to repeat it here in this episode for winning one of the 5 Vintage Geek books, and I can actually repeat the question. It was in 1 million years BC. What are the names of the 2 tribes that feature within that film? And there's no clue to be found in 2 Tribes, the Frankie Goes to Hollywood song.
No. And honestly, I wouldn't ask you for a clue anyway, because you have a really strange idea of what's easy or what is even a clue. So it's like, I think you just have to know it. And there's no way of looking it up, I don't think. You either know it or you're doomed to not know it.
Excellent. Does it have to be exact spelling?
No. Yes, it has to be exact spelling. And I want
Exactly.
both of the tribes. I want drawings of like what they look like and their kind of loincloths of choice and everything. That will all
And
help.
that's it.
That will
Are
all
there
go
hyphens?
towards them being chosen.
Are there hyphens and accents and all that sort of thing on
Everything.
the words? Where they? Oh my goodness.
Everything. I want to hear how they grunt, or you could just scribble it down, or just two cavemen sort of X scrawls, and we'll give you the book.
Well, Marshall Juice, thank you very much for joining us for these episodes, and we hope to see you at the exhibition, and we hope to see everyone listening at the exhibition when it's back on. When you listen to these podcasts, we'll let you know more about the state of play, and you can follow us, of course, on all of our social media links on Facebook and Twitter, and at rayharryhausen.com. And now the podcasts are available on Spotify, so all of our back catalogue is free to listen to on Spotify, and these episodes will be joining it too. So it just leaves me to say thank you to Marshall Julius, and we'll play out with one of the sequences from the Unsung Harryhausen Creatures. Copyright in the Ray Harryhausen podcast is owned by the Ray and Diana Harryhausen Foundation, a registered Scottish charity, number SC 001419 2020. This recording may not be reproduced in whole or in part without written permission from the Foundation. The views expressed within these podcasts do not necessarily reflect those of the Foundation, its trustee, or employees. For further terms and conditions, please contact us at rayharryhausen.com, where you can find our Facebook and Twitter links.